The tiny white coffin, a stark symbol of innocence lost, seemed impossibly small. It held Laila Marie Daniel, a vibrant 2-year-old whose life was brutally extinguished by the very people entrusted with her care. The courtroom, heavy with grief and a palpable sense of horror, awaited the unfolding of a tragedy. Jennifer Rosenbaum, a woman who projected an image of impeccable respectability, sat at the defense table, her face a carefully constructed mask of sorrow. But beneath the surface, a monstrous secret festered, a darkness that would soon be exposed. This wasn't a mere accident, a cruel twist of fate. It was a calculated act of barbarity, a profound betrayal of the most vulnerable kind. As the harrowing details of Laila's short, agonizing life began to surface, a chilling narrative of systematic abuse, neglect, and ultimately murder would emerge, shaking a community to its core and exposing the gaping wounds in a system designed to protect children. Gina Banks, Laila's grandmother, lovingly nicknamed her Fat Baby. It wasn't a derogatory remark. It was an endearment, a testament to Laila's chubby cheeks, bright blue eyes, and the infectious smile that could melt even the coldest heart. Laila, in her early years, was a picture of toddlerhood bliss. She adored strawberry oatmeal, devoured hot dogs with an enthusiasm that belied her tiny frame, and could make quick work of a box of powdered donuts. Her little toy kitchen was her favorite domain, a place where she'd spend countless hours concocting imaginary feasts, her small hands mimicking the movements of a seasoned chef. The catchy tunes of Yo Gabba Gabba filled their modest apartment with laughter, Laila bouncing along to the music, her face alight with pure joy. Though she was a little behind other children her age in terms of speech development, still finding her voice, she was never shy about asserting her independence. "Big girl," she'd declare, puffing out her chest with adorable seriousness. She was a sweetheart, her laughter infectious, her love unconditional. She was deeply cherished, especially by her mother, Tessa Clendenning, her grandmother Gina, and her great-aunt Kim Smith. They saw in her a beacon of light, a pure, unadulterated innocence that made their own struggles seem a little more bearable. However, even in these early days, the foundation of Laila's life was far from stable. The adults who loved her struggled with their own demons, casting long shadows that would eventually engulf her. Tessa's childhood was a fractured narrative, marked by instability and the deep wounds of abandonment. Taken from her parents at a young age, she'd spent time in the foster care system, a place where children often languish, lost in the bureaucratic maze, shuffled from home to home, never truly finding a place to belong. It was there, in the sterile, often impersonal environment of a group home, that she met Jennifer Hull. Jennifer's family existed on the fringes of society, their lives a constant struggle for survival. They moved from the streets to makeshift tents, then to dilapidated cars, always one step away from complete destitution. At 9 years old, Jennifer, too, was swallowed by the foster care system, eventually landing in the same group home as Tessa. They weren't close friends. Their connection forged more by a shared experience of a system that had failed them both, a system that was supposed to protect them. Years later, their paths would cross again, a fateful and ultimately tragic reunion that would have devastating consequences for a little girl named Laila. This shared history, this common experience of vulnerability and institutional failure, would form a twisted bond between them, a bond that would ultimately seal Laila's fate. October 2011 brought Millie, Tessa's first daughter, born to then-boyfriend Jacob Place. A year later, Tessa was in a relationship with Anthony Daniel, and Laila was born in July 2013. The first year of Laila's life was a chaotic blur, a whirlwind of instability and uncertainty. She and Millie lived with Tessa in a small, often squalid apartment, their lives marked by a constant state of flux. George's Division of Family and Children Services became a frequent, unwelcome presence, visiting their home multiple times, investigating a string of disturbing reports of child abuse and neglect. These reports detailed concerning incidents, unexplained bruises on the children, accounts of harsh discipline, and an overall sense of neglect that permeated the atmosphere of the apartment. Tessa, always defensive and often evasive, claimed she never intentionally avoided caseworkers, attributing the issues to misunderstandings, overzealous social workers, and the biases of those who judged her. Seeking a fresh start, or perhaps an escape from scrutiny, she moved to North Carolina, and the Georgia's Division of Family and Children Services case was closed, swept under the rug, despite the lingering shadows of suspicion and the unanswered questions surrounding the children's well-being. The cycle had begun, a pattern of neglect and oversight that would ultimately lead to tragedy. By Laila's first birthday, Tessa's struggles with substance use had spiraled out of control, her addiction tightening its grip on her life. A hospital visit following Laila's birthday party, an incident shrouded in secrecy and suspicion, became the catalyst for intervention. Millie, older and more vulnerable, was sent to live with Gina, seeking the stability and care she desperately needed. Laila, too young to fully comprehend the upheaval that had shattered her small world, was placed in the care of a family friend, Cynthia Tate. Cynthia provided Laila with a safe, loving environment, a stark and welcome contrast to the chaos and uncertainty she'd known in her young life. She reported that Laila was healthy and happy, a bright spark in a world that seemed determined to dim her light. Laila visited Tessa on Thanksgiving and other holidays, these visits becoming fragile threads connecting her to her mother, a tenuous link to a past that was both familiar and frightening. These visits, while intended to maintain a connection, were also a source of anxiety for Cynthia, who worried about the environment Laila was returning to, the potential for relapse, and the ever-present shadow of Georgia's Division of Family and Children's Services involvement. January 2015. Tessa's worst fears were realized. She was arrested for conspiracy to distribute crystal meth, her addiction finally catching up with her, the consequences of her choices impacting not only her own life, but the lives of her children. 3 months in jail. Laila's father, Anthony, was also incarcerated, leaving the 2 little girls adrift in the system, vulnerable and alone. Tessa, in a desperate, last-ditch attempt to keep her children out of the dreaded foster care system, arranged for them to stay with various family friends, a patchwork of temporary caregivers, each with their own limitations and potential risks. Upon her release, Tessa, clinging to the hope of regaining custody, moved in with Cynthia, promising to turn her life around. But her efforts were short-lived, undermined by the relentless pull of addiction. A failed drug test soon after triggered Georgia's Division of Family and Children's Services intervention, and Millie and Laila were placed in foster care with Loretta Brown, a seasoned foster parent known for her compassion, her experience, and her unwavering dedication to the well-being of the children in her care. This placement, while initially a source of fear for Tessa, would become a brief haven for Laila, a short respite from the storm that was brewing. Loretta's home was a sanctuary, a place where children who had experienced trauma and neglect could finally feel safe, loved, and nurtured. Laila and Millie, initially withdrawn and wary, their eyes reflecting the pain and uncertainty they had endured, slowly began to blossom under her care. Laila, especially, gravitated towards Loretta, finding comfort and security in her gentle presence. She clung to Loretta, her tiny hand gripping her foster mother's finger with unwavering trust, a silent plea for stability and love. Millie, older and more resilient, found joy in playing with Loretta's daughter, a welcome escape from the trauma she had witnessed and experienced. For a fleeting moment, there was a sense of normalcy, a chance for the girls to simply be children, to laugh, to play, to forget the uncertainties and fears that plagued their young lives. During this time, Tessa, seemingly motivated by the threat of losing her children permanently, appeared to be making progress, diligently attending her required programs, undergoing therapy, and working towards regaining custody of her children. A glimmer of hope, fragile and tentative, appeared on the horizon. But it was a false dawn, a deceptive calm before the storm that was about to break. May arrived, bringing with it a fateful hearing, a pivotal moment that would determine the future of Laila and Millie. Tessa and her mother, Gina, were present, their hearts filled with a mixture of hope and anxiety. They desperately wanted their family back together, but the shadow of Tessa's past mistakes loomed large. And so was Jennifer Rosenbaum. Jennifer, now married, presented herself as a picture of success and stability. She was a striking figure, her presence commanding attention and respect. Her resume was meticulously crafted, a carefully curated list of accomplishments designed to impress. Military service, a law degree, a picture-perfect family, and an air of effortless competence. She exuded an aura of control, a sense that she had it all together. She saw Laila and Millie, and something stirred within her, a dark desire masked by a veneer of altruism. It wasn't compassion. It was something far more sinister, a predatory instinct that recognized vulnerability and saw an opportunity to exploit it. She reached out to Tessa via social media, a seemingly benevolent offer. She would care for the girls until Tessa was stable enough to have them back. It was a carefully calculated move, a strategic manipulation designed to gain Tessa's trust. It was a tempting proposition, a lifeline thrown to a desperate mother who yearned to have her children back in her arms. Tessa, perhaps blinded by hope, perhaps manipulated by Jennifer's seemingly genuine concern, agreed. It was a decision that would ultimately condemn Laila to a world of unspeakable pain and suffering. This seemingly chance encounter, this seemingly generous offer, was the beginning of the end for Laila. Supervised visits began, a carefully monitored dance between hope and suspicion. Jennifer was charming, attentive, playing the role of the concerned and caring foster parent to perfection. She showered the girls with gifts, spoke to them in soothing tones, and presented a facade of unwavering devotion. But Loretta, a seasoned caregiver with a keen eye for detail, noticed things that others missed. Subtle shifts in Laila's demeanor, a growing reticence, a flicker of fear in her eyes. And then there were the injuries. Small at first, easily dismissed as childhood bumps and bruises. A scrape on the knee, a bump on the forehead. But then they became more frequent, more pronounced. A bruise on Laila's arm, too large to be accidental. A cut on her lip, unexplained. Loretta documented everything, her concerns growing with each visit. She reported these incidents to Georgia's Division of Family and Children's Services, her voice filled with worry, her gut telling her that something was terribly wrong. But Jennifer's polished exterior, her connections within the community, her apparent eagerness to help, seemed to sway the system. Loretta's warnings, her detailed observations, were minimized, dismissed as the anxieties of an overprotective foster parent. The system, designed to protect children, was failing Laila, its checks and balances rendered ineffective by Jennifer's manipulative charm. The door closed behind Laila and Millie, and the light of hope that had flickered briefly began to dim, then extinguish altogether. Within the walls of the Rosenbaum's seemingly idyllic home, a different story unfolded, a narrative of unimaginable cruelty and abuse. Laila's health deteriorated rapidly. The bruises became more frequent, darker, larger. Welts appeared on her small body, raised and angry, evidence of physical beatings. There were signs of more serious injuries that could not be explained away as accidents. Laila became withdrawn, her bright, infectious smile replaced by a look of constant fear, a haunting reflection of the terror she endured. She was trapped, a tiny, defenseless victim in a world of unimaginable cruelty, subjected to systematic torture at the hands of the woman who had promised to care for her. The details of the abuse are too horrific to fully comprehend, too painful to recount. But they paint a picture of a child subjected to repeated beatings, deprived of food and water, isolated and alone, her cries for help going unheard, ignored by a system that had already failed her. The choking on a chicken nugget story was just the final, desperate act in a long history of abuse. November 17th. A 911 call, the last desperate attempt to conceal the monstrous truth. Jennifer's voice, strained and panicked, claiming Laila was choking on a chicken nugget. It was a lie, a pathetic fabrication designed to deflect blame and escape accountability. First responders arrived at the Rosenbaums' home to a scene of horror. Laila, unresponsive, Her small body, covered in bruises and welts, bore the unmistakable marks of prolonged and brutal abuse. The chicken nugget was a red herring, a flimsy excuse that crumbled under the weight of the overwhelming evidence of torture. They rushed her to the hospital, but it was too late. The damage was irreversible. The official cause of death, blunt force injuries, a clinical term that masked the brutal reality of the violence inflicted upon her. The chicken nugget was a lie, a pathetic attempt to mask the monstrous truth. The investigation was swift, the evidence overwhelming. The carefully constructed facade of Jennifer Rosenbaum began to crumble, revealing the monster that lurked beneath. She and Joseph Rosenbaum were arrested and charged with murder, their carefully crafted world of lies and deceit finally exposed. The trial was a harrowing affair. The details of Laila's abuse laid bare for all to see, each revelation a fresh wound, a testament to the depths of human depravity. Jennifer's carefully constructed persona of the grieving foster mother was shattered, revealing the cold, calculating killer beneath. She was found guilty and sentenced to life plus 40 years. Joseph, complicit in the abuse, received 30 years. Justice, of a sort, was served, but was a hollow victory, a small measure of retribution that could never bring Laila back, could never undo the horrific suffering she endured. Laila's story is a tragedy, a stark and heartbreaking reminder of the failures of the child welfare system, a system that was designed to protect her but ultimately failed her in the most profound way. It's a story of broken trust, of innocence betrayed, of a little girl who was failed by the very people who were supposed to keep her safe. But it's also a story of love, the enduring love of her grandmother, her great-aunt, her foster mother Loretta, and all those who cared for her. And though her life was tragically short, brutally extinguished before it had barely begun, Laila's memory lives on, a beacon of light in the darkness. Her family fights for her, ensuring that her story is told, that her life, however brief, will not be forgotten. They remember her laughter, her bright smile, her fat baby cheeks. They remember Laila Marie Daniel, the little girl who loved Yo Gabba Gabbum and chicken nuggets, the little girl who deserved a lifetime of love and happiness, but whose life was stolen by the very people who were supposed to care for her. Her story serves as a call to action, a plea for a better system, a system that truly protects the most vulnerable among us, a system that will never again allow a child like Laila to fall through the cracks. If you are moved by Laila's story and want to help raise awareness about the importance of child protection, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and family. Every share helps spread the message that we must work together to protect vulnerable children everywhere. Leave a comment below to let us know what actions you're taking to support child welfare, and make sure to hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Together, we can make a difference. Thank you for watching, and let's keep Laila's memory alive by standing up for those who cannot speak for themselves.